Runway.
Welcome back to another episode of The Runway. Today I'm joined by some of my esteemed guests here. Why don't we just dive in? Everybody can introduce themselves. Larry, why don't you take it off here?
Oh, sure. Well, everyone knows who I am. I'm Larry Lepard. I wrote the big print, Sound Money guy. And I'm just here for the coffee.
Scott Anderson, background in commercial real estate. Last couple of years, interest in Bitcoin. Here to ask questions.
Nice. I'm Craig Shapiro, Naples native. Well, actually, Naples local, New York native. And I'm a macro strategist for a firm called the Bear Traps Report.
Nice. Well, I'm Matty Ice. I'm your host. We've got a lot to talk about today, a lot of stuff going on in the world. I'm here with Larry for the next couple of weeks. We're recording a series, a Cypherpunk'd, our other podcast series, more of like a long-form content on his book, The Big Print, which is a fantastic book. So if you are tuned in and you haven't read the book, go for it. You can get it on Audible now too, right? With I think Walker.
Walker read it. Yeah.
He read it, so that like that's my jam. I mean, I like to I like doing both, but get it on Audible and give it a listen while you're in the car, while you're driving. It's really well written in layman's terms for people that might not know a lot about Bitcoin or a lot about like how the financial system works. It really kind of walks you through it. So our series is going to unpack it. So give it a listen, and then after you've listened to it, you can come listen to our 10-episode podcast series we're recording on the Big Print. Today, we've got a lot of stuff queued up. We're going to actually give away 2 tickets, one to the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, which I think tickets are going for somewhere between $300 and $600 now, I think. So pretty big value there, courtesy of Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club. So we're going to give away one of those tickets to whoever asks the best question on any of the live streams, right? I believe we're on Rumble and YouTube and X and all these platforms. So whoever asks the best question is going to get a ticket. Larry and Craig are going to be our judges today. So we've got the Bitcoin Conference Las Vegas, and we also have the Bitcoin Day and the Sound Money Soiree in Tampa upcoming in June. So 2 tickets, 2 different great conferences. The Bitcoin Conference in Las Vegas obviously stands on its own merits. I mean, it's such a crazy 2 to 3 day event that is just like the mecca of Bitcoin, of the Bitcoin world. But Bitcoin Day that we have in Tampa, there's these little 1-day events, which is also a great chance to meet people like Larry and like Craig and like myself, and just get to intimately talk to people who understand this stuff and ask questions. It's a much more smaller, more personalized setting. So you're not rushed everywhere like the Bitcoin conference. And every year, it's like there's so much people talking at the same time that you want to see. It's like you're rushing, you're meeting 500 people. It's chaos. Whereas like Bitcoin Day is a very intimate, personal event where you can really just kind of sit, have a nice lunch, ask questions. So we're going to give away those 2 tickets to whoever asks the best questions in the live stream. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. Paul, why don't you get us queued up here with the first story of the day? And it's none other than our guest here, Larry himself. What the internet and Zoom have done to CRE, Bitcoin is going to do to Keynesians and fiat money. Same model. Why don't you unpack that a little bit, Larry?
Yeah, well, it's just the obviously the commercial. It was a tweet. I retweeted Nightingale Associates. It was showing a building in Illinois that I think sold for 94% off its original price. And look, the world's changing, right? And the biggest change in the world, in my view, is distributed technology and information that was brought about by the internet. And the internet changed our lives, and Zoom has now made going into the office much less attractive and necessary. And so we overbuilt office space. And here we've got a building that lost 94% of its value because there's no need for people to go into that office building anymore. That occurred because of the internet, and the same model is going to take place with respect to fiat money. Bitcoin runs on the internet, but it is the network for money, and we all thought we needed fiat money and a banking system and a government that controlled the money, and in fact we don't. And
what a shocker! What a surprise!
Yeah, and in fact, having mathematical code that enforces fair rules, it's a better deal for everybody.
No way.
Yeah, right way.
Wow,
isn't that amazing? And of course, the whole world doesn't really understand that.
But
yet.
what about all the people that have power and they're politicians and they want to print money and give it to all their buddies and friends and family members.
It's not going to go well for them, Maddie. I mean, it's just.
I mean, but what about Hillary Clinton's daughter who got a new house and car and wedding and everything paid for?
Yeah, all the USAID people. Yeah, no, it's.
Is that true?
It is. It is actually true. They've doubled down
recently.
on it. They released that she basically took her NGO is essentially paying for her life. I mean, she was supposed to give money to kids in Haiti for food, and apparently, like half the money went to her. So
the liberals still don't believe that.
I mean, it's factually true at this point. I mean, she's just a microcosm of the whole problem. I mean, it's just that she's the canary in the coal mine of all of the issues of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
But I did bring a commercial realtor here to talk about this as well. We have one in the flesh. They are still real. They are still employed.
Yeah.
What do you have to say here, Scotty boy?
It's bleak out there for commercial real estate. Generally, I mean, you're on point there. $5 per square foot, 5 years free rent is not good signs, and it's not just office. It's also industrial. It's also multifamily. There's struggles everywhere.
I might try to renegotiate my deal here. I've got a great setup here, but I might even be able to get it better.
Naples is a little different, but like there are pockets that are better than others. Naples office is okay, but just generally it's bleak.
Yeah. Okay. Paul, why don't you take us to our next take here? There's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. Let's see here. Here we go with did you guys, this is kind of a interesting, funny interview. Here we just talk about it right here. Trump says Doge found tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. ABC says fraud is a crime. There have been no referrals to the DOJ. Trump says, well, you don't know that, do you? How do you know that? And then he goes, I'm asking you. He's like, you're not asking me. You made a statement. Yes, there have it. What do you guys think about this? You think that we're going to unpack some fraud here? What do you got, Craig?
I mean, sure. I'm sure there's fraud. I'm sure there's things that have not hit the press as far as criminal activity that's in process of being, litigated or being, cases are being brought up. But, look, I mean, it's classic Trump, right? I mean, it's the hyperbole and the narrative and the spin. It always leads the facts, and I think look, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad, right? I mean, I think the intent of Doge, right, to reduce government spending, to eliminate fraud, to eliminate waste, is a great idea, right? But it's being sold and has been sold as this thing that's going to work imminently, that's going to be massive in the degree of imminent cutting that it's able to do. And the reality is that this stuff just takes time, right? And so, but when you spin it's happening right now. It's rampant. It's all over the place. And then you have to backtrack a little bit. It just, I don't know, it just puts a little bit of, there's less credibility behind this. And Trump doesn't care about that stuff typically, but when you pile that on with some of the other, let's just call it disappointments in the narrative versus reality of what he says versus what's going on, it's not a surprise to me that his approval rating is starting to slide, right? And so we know why he got elected and the mandate he got elected and the euphoria for a Trump White House, Republican Senate, Republican House of Representatives, coordinated government that was going to do a lot. But, it takes time. And when you kind of have this over-promise, under-deliver mentality, style, which is, that is Trump, it sometimes it just wears people out. And I think we're in that little bit of a phase here where he's wearing people out a little bit here with the chaos and the volatility. And people are like, you don't have to do that. Just deliver on these good ideas, and I think that would be enough. But it's the hyperbole that I think is frustrating.
To be fair, it's not just Trump. I mean, I think I actually am a little more angry with Elon because he came in and Doge is going to eliminate $2 trillion worth of spending.
That's a big goal.
And anybody who knows anything about the budget knows that it was completely unrealistic. So $2 trillion became $1 trillion very quickly.
Yeah,
and now $1 trillion is maybe $150 billion. I mean.
I think they've reached 150 billion. If you look at the Doge tracker, can you pull the Doge tracker up? I think they're already there. We're like 100 days in.
Fair enough.
I don't know if it's all true. I mean, it seems like they're posting everything live, what they're finding and what they're saving. Yeah. So we're at 153 billion according to their live tracker. 160 actually.
That's great.
Yeah,
look,
that's legit.
I applaud the effort. Yeah. I totally applaud the effort. But again, as Craig used the term, and as CEOs and company managers, we know, you want to under-promise and over-deliver.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%.
When you're talking $2 trillion and $2 trillion becomes 150, that's a big difference, and that's unfortunate because I generally speaking support all the efforts that are going on here. It's just it's just unfortunate they've missed the target by that much, but.
Well, they've got 4 years, so the question is,
that's right.
Maybe they. If they stay on this pace, I don't know. We'll see, right? Like,
Elon's taking some time off though, too, right? Doesn't he take a step back?
I think what David Sachs said on the All In Pod is a pretty good explainer of how Elon operates. First off, his role, he can only work so many days technically, which I think is like 153 days or something along those lines that he can do for the government. But what he does, like what he does with Twitter and all these other things, is because he's managing so many companies, is like he's got this hyper intensive focus to where he really understands how every little thing works, and then he can put his people in place. And I think something similar is happening here, where he's hyper fixated on it, focused on it. Then once he understands, he gets his people in place, and then he can kind of back off a little bit and have it go on autopilot. I think that's the argument of what's happening.
That's a nice narrative.
That's the narrative.
There's some fires he needs to put out.
Well, that's why he's saying, he's going back to deal with the Tesla stuff. I mean, there's literal fires he needs to put out because the left is firebombing and burning down buildings and fucking just total chaos stuff that we're seeing.
Right.
Literal, violence, like property destruction. I mean, kind of crazy. So, he definitely figuratively and literally needs to put out fires.
But do you think the market is overreacting? 160 billion in 100 days seems pretty impressive. It might be a high time preference thing where people just want things to happen so quickly, and really it needs to take a year and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what exactly this, that tracker is tracking necessarily. We have $2 trillion a year deficits, and the 160 of spending, I think, is like over time. So it's not like the 150.
I see what you're saying.
I think it might be annual run rate, Craig. I could be wrong. Well, that was my understanding of it. I could be wrong, but it's look, it's problematic. I mean, I think Scott, to answer your question, as Craig points out, the annual deficit is running at least at 2 to 2.3 trillion, and so even a couple $100 billion doesn't really solve the problem, and
doesn't move the needle.
It doesn't move the needle that much. And as you note, one of the things I was somewhat disappointed was to see the defense budget went up. Right? I mean, it's kind of like, well, that's not going in the right direction. Where are you going to get that from?
Right. Yeah.
So the fiscal trap that they're in is very large, very much looming, and very much a problem. And Besant knows that, and the bond market was what forced them to pull back the tariffs for 90 days. And now we're left to see, can we make a deal with China? How quickly does that deal get done, if it gets done at all? And how soon do we, quote unquote, have empty shelves, as a result of no shipments?
Yeah, I mean, I think they told people that by cutting U.S. aid and cutting fraud and cutting waste, that they could basically balance the budget, right? They gave this view that that's actually that could happen, which was mathematically impossible.
Correct.
Yeah.
And with entitlements and with defense and with VA benefits and with interest, I mean, you're talking about close to 90% of receipts or more already.
Yeah.
So, and that's not being touched at all. So It's just there's this disconnect between what they're promising, and Trump says, yeah, we're going to balance the budget next year. We know that's BS, but that's something that they're aspiring to.
It's a pie in the sky.
They're gonna come up very short of that. And then, with respect to the entitlements, we do need to make some structural changes in entitlement spending, how we think about it, in defense spending for sure. And so that is disappointing. And the fact that we're gonna go into we're gonna run this budget and that we're talking about tax cuts that are potentially not going to be financed with spending cuts. I mean, this has gotten Rand Paul pretty upset. I think he gave a pretty fiery speech earlier this week or last week about how he can't support this budget because we're going to raise another $5 trillion in debt over 2 years. I mean, these numbers are massive.
Mathematically,
and Republicans are kind of doing what the Biden administration did here with these budget aspirations. And
that $5 trillion is factoring in the rolling debt with higher interest rates. Is that in that
Are-
number? Yeah.
that's
Are
basically
they?
it.
Are they? Have you looked at I know the Senate and the House are going back and forth with this budget. I know Trump. They wanted this continuing resolution to try to get it all figured out. Like, how does that all look? Have you dove into the mathematics of all that? Is there going to be cuts at the end of the day? Are we gonna, or is this just going to continue?
I mean, it seems like they have reasonably good traction to get this passed in the Senate. But the House is a bigger issue because you have moderate conservatives who don't want to cut anything out of Medicare or Medicaid, which is where some of the spending cuts are being discussed. And then you have folks on the far right, the Freedom Caucus people who are saying we're not cutting anywhere near close to amount of what we'd like to cut. And now that Trump's talking about removing income taxes for anyone who makes under $200,000 a year and no tax on tips and all these things, like the need to cut spending is growing by the day. So look, I think if the markets are struggling and the economy is struggling and we need it, they'll just do it, right? They'll just rip it. They'll just be a huge deficit and they'll pass it. But I think if we're kind of here, I think there's still going to be some Republicans who are like, yeah, I'm not ready to. I need to enact my pound of flesh here a little bit more.
If you want to know what's really going to happen at the end of the day, you're going to have to read Larry's book, because I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, but if you read his book, you will find out what's going to end up happening.
The title lays it out. I mean, what I find most interesting is that there was a lot of happiness amongst a lot of people in the business community, just in one part of America at large when Trump won. And there was a lot of optimism, and the market did well for a while. And and we all hoped for and wanted the best. And now we're beginning to see that it's actually quite messy. As an example, an area where I'm a little disappointed, I thought they would have made more progress on the Ukraine. And, that's kind of become somewhat of a mess.
I've been reading that they're close to a deal, and
perhaps,
you see Trump sitting with Zelensky. And
perhaps. I mean, I hope they are. But
there was a ceasefire recently that they finally did get through with, I think it was some kind of Easter or something.
It seems to be going back and forth. But I guess the point is, I think the market is now beginning to focus. And, the tariffs and the way that was brought on, and it was somewhat clumsy, I think, in the way they announced that. And then what that did to the bond market, which I'm sure Craig was all over.
Where are we at right now with that, Craig? Actually, can you comment on that? Because it went up, spiked up, and now it's like coming back down. So we're back down again. So where
yields have fallen, but they feel like they've fallen now for the wrong reason, right? The bond market is starting to become concerned about empty shelves in retail and in Middle America in the next, starting in the next 4 to 6 weeks, right? There's been plenty of stories about slowdown in container shipments out of China that take 20, 30 days to get here, and then unload it in LA and then get on trucks. And so by the time you get to the middle of May, towards the third week of May, that would be the initial impact from Liberation Day and from the added China tariffs. And so by the end of May, we're going to start to see these issues developing, and then through June, store shelves are going to be in some trouble. And then what is that, how does the average American deal with that? And is that going to be like a big problem? Or
I keep hearing that. I'm curious to see how it plays out. Like I've seen a lot of your posts on X, and I'm kind of just like, it's been 90 to 100 days. Let's see what happens. And I'm open-minded. Like,
is there any way to tell who's buying those bonds? Is it the Cayman Bros, the hedge fund guys?
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of speculation during the sell-off that Japanese and Chinese were sellers, and foreigners have been selling, and there's been this trade out of dollar assets as money has been expropriated, back to homeland in Europe or Japan or China or whatever. But I think as folks get more concerned about growth and inflation coming down and the potential for the Fed to eventually cut interest rates, there has been a back and forth. There's been a bit of a flight to quality or flight to safety back in treasuries, but more from domestic buyers and hedge funds and more price sensitive buyers who are more concerned about growth. So, but right now, 10-year has rallied a lot, and I think that's comforting, probably, just because I think the administration and the Fed are much more concerned about the bond market than the equity market. And so I think they'll tolerate an equity market correction if the bond market is strong. What they won't tolerate is equities and bonds both selling off together. That's a big problem for them.
So are we heading in the right direction here? I think 4.1 is where I saw the rates are right around there right now. Like, do you think that's going to keep going down, or are you not optimistic?
It kind of depends on your definition of the right direction, and why is that the right direction?
Well, we got to refinance our debt. We want that down.
If we have a very nasty short-term COVID-like slowdown where the supply chain in America is completely decimated and folks are scrambling to get basic necessities. I mean, and we rally bonds on that. Is that, that a good thing? I mean, yeah, sure. Over time, we do need to refinance our debt, and over time, it will force the Fed to cut rates. Inflation will be falling. Oil prices got hit again today, down 4%. There was talk from Saudi that they have been signaling that they are very comfortable with a low price oil environment for the next several years, if that's what it comes to. So kind of insinuating potentially that they're going to turn the pumps back on and a market share war might develop, which means lower oil, which means lower inflation, which means lower rates. So that's positive, but into a slowing economy, where tariffs are still top of mind and companies' margins are getting hit, there will be a wave of layoffs that comes as well. So I think we have to balance.
How are
both those
tariff
things.
revenues looking? Have you looked at that at all? Is
Yeah,
that
I mean,
a legitimate income stream potentially.
So I mean,
Offset some of the-
they've been coming in, not as robust as initially thought, but they are starting to
Yeah.
hit. But the 90-day delay, slowed down that tariff intake. And if no products are coming from China, then there's no tariff revenue either, right? We basically put a blockade around Chinese goods at 145% tariff, so we're not going to earn any tariff revenues if no goods come here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a bit of an issue. I mean, I think it's the administration continues to go back and forth about the goal here of tariffs. Is it to earn revenues? Is it to protect domestic industry? Is it to encourage?
Why can't it be all the above?
Yeah, no, I mean, it should be. It's just, again, like
The messaging has been
their
poor, is what you're
messaging
saying,
has
yeah.
just been,
It's all over the place. It's a
yeah,
little
and
erratic.
and they're, and then even, Trump says he doesn't care about the market, and then he cares about the market. Then this morning it's Biden's market, and then now the market's up, and it's going to be, market up finished up today, not down, and so it's probably Trump's market. So, it's.
Have you been following Basent? I feel like he's really the guy. Like I really listen to him. It seems like he's got a much better handle on the messaging, I guess.
I think
if you
he's
ignore.
clearly the adult in the room of all the guys there. And, it's interesting the way they've denied that the bond market and Basent, convinced them to do the 90 days when I'm absolutely convinced that that's what made them do the 90-day delay. I'm not quite sure what his whole game is. I mean, there are a lot of interesting things going on. One thing that I think he might be doing, I mean, they know that Powell's not going to move because Powell wants to be Volcker and he's going to hang tough. He's not going to move until he has political cover to move or until he has to move, until the third mandate of financial stability kicks in. And so I've often thought, Basent's not stupid. He understands that what he's doing is going to hurt the markets and that might force Powell to move. So, there are two ways to get Powell to move. One is to tell him to move and he doesn't. The second is to make markets do something that force him into moving. But the more interesting thing, the thing that I've been kind of picking up on, and as you know, our friend Luke has been picking up on this as well, Luke Roman, the Trump tweeted that he who has the gold makes the rules over the weekend.
Did he?
Yeah, and the gold flows into the United States have been stunning.
Really?
I mean, just really large rates. Yeah,
Wow.
kind of like at an annualized rate of something like 5,000 tons. We only have 8,000 tons in theory. And everything I've studied over the years, being a gold guy and knowing a lot of gold people, some who even knew people inside the Johnson administration, we took some of the gold in the 60s and used it to support the London gold pool. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So the notion that we have all the gold we say we have is not true. We don't. We were missing some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
Yeah.
So if
I mean, there's a reason they don't let you go into that safe anymore.
well, that's right.
to
I mean, it
verify
hasn't
that.
been audited since Eisenhower.
Yeah.
So as a practical matter, if you were thinking about going back to the gold standard, and we also know that last summer Basent said, monetary system's unbalanced. I recognize there's probably going to be some need for a grand conference or a reset, something along the lines of Bretton Woods. And when that occurs, I want to be at the table. He said that in June of last year. So, makes you, we're just reading the tea leaves here, but it makes you ask the question of, has Basent floated the idea to President Trump of a monetary reset based on gold? And of course he said, when he was talking about monetizing assets, he said gold was not one of them. But of course they have to deny this stuff right up until the last minute.
To the last minute, yeah.
And then, they could conceivably do something. And, I mean, I think Basent understands how unbalanced things are. I think they need a lower dollar in sound money terms. The two choices for sound money are Bitcoin and gold. And
Do you think Bitcoin plays a role in this?
Oh,
Considering how adamant this administration and people like Bassett have been.
Absolutely.
When it comes
I mean,
to this.
Bassett's a Bitcoin bull, and
Yeah.
Bassett's a gold guy. I think ultimately they'll get to Bitcoin. I think they might start with gold, just because it's larger and better known. But I'm sure it has crossed Bassett's mind that we need a monetary reset. Does that mean he's going to have the political cover and the will to do it? I don't know. I'd be curious to see what you think, Craig. But but you must admit it has to have crossed his mind.
Yeah. No, and the conspiratorial part of this all was, it's often known, or the Vatican has often been
I saw that.
been seen and known to be a very large custodian of gold,
Really?
throughout
Interesting.
history, and
Huge.
there's plenty of theories about how they got the gold and the like, and how they store it. And it's just so interesting that Trump makes that tweet about he has the gold is the same day that JD Vance shows up at the Vatican to talk to the Pope. And then, obviously, the Pope died the next day.
You're going to start some serious conspiracy theories dead on Easter.
But that's just, I mean, but look, I think Bassett was quoted early in 24 in an interview that he did that basically said he understands that there's a monetary reset, and part of the reason that he's joined up with
He wants to be a
Trump
part of it.
administration is he wants a seat at the table. He wants to help orchestrate that. And he's a student of monetary history, and he's a professor of monetary history, economic history, and so he feels like he is as equipped as anybody certainly in the administration, if not in the country, to help navigate that. And I respect that civic duty aspect of it. I think.
I mean, he literally sunk the pound. I mean, like him and Soros. I mean, like this guy's. I wouldn't bet against this guy. I mean, the guy knows. The guy fucking went against the central bank when he was in the private industry and just like totally.
I think they would have liked to, have this Mar-a-Lago Accord kind of play out on their terms, and so I guess the sooner we do it, the better. I think from Bassett's point of view, I can't imagine he thought that the tariffs on China going 125% was a good idea.
No.
There's no way that he believed that was a good idea, but I think he realized that just getting all the rest of the reciprocal tariffs down so we can create this trading bloc and away from China was a good is a 1B option, right? Because he wasn't going to get everything rolled back, but Trump probably said, "Look, I'll take him back on everything else, but we got to go hard on China." And I think Bassett probably acknowledged, okay, like let's play that out and see that, and that dynamic, I think, is probably what's going to wind up accelerating the timeline to a larger reset, because
it seems like a lot's happening with India now too. There's a lot there. What do you think about that? I mean, it seems like India is wanting to play ball with us. They're going to take 90% of their tariffs off for the most part, and they want to be our main producer. They're Apple is moving their infrastructure there. I mean,
who knows, right? I mean,
I
think
there's a credible threat there.
I mean,
China.
I think they're playing both sides, right?
I
I mean, they're also speculating to be attacking Pakistan this week too. So I mean,
hopefully that doesn't happen.
with me. I agree.
Pakistan, I mean, that was crazy, the terrorist attack over there. I mean, I'm not familiar with the politics or area, but they essentially expelled everybody from the country that was Pakistani and said, just, we can't do this.
Look, I think the U.S. and I forget whose analogy this was, but the U.S. It's like the U.S. and China are the divorced.
It was Jordy Visser.
Yeah, it was Jordy. Yeah, it was like these are the divorced parents, and all the other countries are the children, and they're just kind of like sitting around, like waiting to figure out timing.
He called me first. No, she called me first.
India's like the side piece, though. They're trying to slide in. I guess there's some drama between China and India, and they consider each other kind of frenemies in the same way we consider China a frenemy in a way. I don't know.
One of the things, though, that I think in Bassett, for all that he's a smart guy and I think he's trying to do the right things, I think he and Trump, because I know their messaging hasn't been good on this, I think they've underestimated how big a problem they're tackling here.
It's a big one.
It's a really, really big one. And
you're changing the engine while the plane's flying. I mean, that's just like...
and they think that they can kind of just make these tweaks and do it as they're going along, and it's all going to be okay. And you put me in the camp of it's not going to all be okay.
Really?
It's going to be a real mess. It's going to be one hell of a shit show as we go through the transition. And in that respect, if I were advising Trump, I think, and you and I talked about this earlier today, I think one of the mistakes they made here, before they did the whole tariff thing, was not to come out with with the speech from the Oval Office very seriously.
A fireside chat of sorts.
The fireside chat saying, hey, we've identified some problems. Here's what they are. We're going to tackle them, and it's going to be aggressive in the way we tackle them, and it's going to be a bumpy ride. And so you should prepare for the bumpy ride and understand that we do have a long-term strategy. And, you know, after this turbulence, we think things will be much better. But, you know, I thought the way they came into they did the Navarro thing. They came in and he had the chart with the reciprocal tariffs. These high, I mean, to me, that was just kind of ham-handed and not well communicated. And then it gave the Democrats a chance to kind of say, hey, look, he's blowing up 401ks.
So you're not a fan of Peter Ritardo,
No.
in the words of Elon Musk?
No, I'm not a Navarro fan at all.
What do you?
They're making
Ron Vara, right?
Yeah, Ron Vara. They're making these moves with the idea that they don't think China knows that that U.S. is on some type of time constraint. We have the midterms coming up in 2026. We have this rolling debt that we want to get the interest rates down for. Like, we're kind of working in.
I saw a thing though that like recently, I think I tagged it in our stuff. I don't know if we'll get to it. It's pretty far down the list, but a lot of people that are like, Xi also has to answer to the people there. People think he doesn't, but apparently there's a lot of discontent with people that are historically loyal to him, and they've kind of just disappeared. A lot of people in his power cabinet are disappearing.
Certainly, if their economy does a hard stop and a lot of people lose their jobs, and I mean, they will hurt too, but they have probably more ability to endure pain. But to your point, Scott, that was very good. Is that Trump in Trumpian fashion declared massive war on China, and here we are. We've got kind of a glass chin, and our glass chin is our financial markets.
Yeah.
And these are people who take multi-decade views of getting ahead, and we're on 2- and 4-year election cycles. And so, I think, Craig, you agree with me on this. I mean, this was, you can be pro-Trump, anti-Trump, doesn't matter. I try to stay neutral, but the fact of the matter is, I don't think this was executed as well as it could have been,
No, I think the fireside chat and messaging, was really needed and was really botched, right? There's two, at least two, but two fundamental reasons why we need this. One, we have a massive opioid crisis in this country that has stemmed from the hollowing out of the middle class and the loss of manufacturing jobs and the loss of tens of thousands of factories that's happened over the course of decades. That started with China's acceptance into WTO and accelerated, and so this is a national emergency that we've had in America. The loss of children and people throughout society, basically wartime. These are war casualties. Yeah. So part of the tariffs is to address that reality.
Right.
The second.
National security too. I mean, like, we've got to be able to make drones and medicine here. Like,
and that's the
rare earths.
Right. And that's the second part. And that's the second part,
existential.
Which is COVID exposed the issues that the American supply chain faces. Right. Correct. That we don't make our own medicine. We don't make our own semiconductors. We can't make our own weapons without semiconductors, and we are lacking in fundamental critical elements, including rare earths, in order to fight the potential next war. And so if you would have spun it that way and really explained to the American public, like, we are actually at war. Our citizens have already died, and we don't have the supply chain to strengthen our national security. Plus, during the Biden administration, we spent a lot of money in weapons, sending them to Israel and sending them to Ukraine. So we've depleted a lot of our weapons stock. So this is a national emergency. This is wartime decisions that we're making. So Americans need to.
I mean, we're already running wartime deficits.
Americans
so we
need
might
to,
as well.
we need to go back to our, 1940s mentality of this. We're all in this together, and so it's going to be a little bit of pain. But if you trust that me and my team have got, figuring this all out, we're strategic industries. We're going to run a wartime economy the right way, and people maybe would have given them the benefit of the doubt,
Paul.
but that's not, that's not how we've done it. It
feels like we're going to need a wartime type of event, because people say they want those jobs back in America, but if you polled the average American and said, would you want to work in that warehouse?
More than 50% I don't think it's.
No, I actually don't want to.
I think people are missing. I don't think it's that shitty warehouse. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think it's, hey, we need to make semiconductors. That's a different warehouse, right? Like, you're in, that's high level tech. You're making drones. Like, that's not the same as making buttons on a sweatshirt, right? Like, you're making expensive biological medicines, right? Like, these are high tech kind of skilled manufacturing jobs, not just like, a robot press a button here, right? Like, it's different. Like, it's the jobs of the future, essentially, the manufacturing of the future, which, batteries, rare earths, all this stuff that matters for the future, right? Not just making widgets and little things and low skill like jobs, right? Like we're talking about high end type of work, expensive components, stuff like that, that are crucial for national security. And maybe we don't need to import all of that. Maybe we can still have, China can still, other countries can still have that, and we can import stuff there. But we got to have that 10% production capacity here. Like we got to have some level of national security concern, where we're able to produce this stuff. And then it also goes hand in hand with what you're saying is, this huge epidemic of people not, there's got to be a rebalancing here. Like Bassett and Trump, they're right about that. Like it is not like it's just not conducive to having everything totally hollowed out here. We don't make anything. We have no way to defend ourselves. And then China is like in the WTO and they're still considered a developing country and getting all these special benefits, and they don't have to follow any of the rules that all the other countries have to follow, it's ridiculous. I mean, they're not a developing country. They're the second most powerful nation in the world, and all the money and stuff like they're pumping it into their military. I mean, it's honestly crazy.
They
the
weren't
ships,
even developing in 2003.
we made like 3 ships this year, and like China made like 3,000 ships. Like that's not like things have to be rebalanced to some extent. And the argument of we're exporting money and we get this exorbitant privilege, like that's all legitimate, but still there needs to be some rebalancing. That's my thought.
The difficulty is, as Craig just described, I mean, we're trying to fix a 25-year problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. God himself couldn't fix it, and certainly he couldn't fix it in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've got to lean in the right direction, but I think we have to be more intelligent about the way we do this. And
you guys have far more experience than me, so I'm observing. I'm like literally.
We all are, and we're all just kind of groping around to see what happens. I mean, right now, the most interesting unknown question, as your producer has put up here, is what's China going to do? So
I wanted to I tagged this take here. And quick reminder, guys, we're giving away 2 tickets today. So one to Bitcoin Las Vegas, 2025. So a free, I think it's $300 to $600 tickets are going for now. We're going to give one away free to whoever asks the best question in the live stream. So, and then we're also giving away a Bitcoin Day Tampa and Sound Money Soiree ticket. So 2 different conferences. We're going to give away 2 tickets to whoever asks the best questions. If you can ask in the live chat, comment on the stream, post, like, follow, retweet, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. But with that being said, let's dive in here to this next take. What do we got here?
Well, this is Lawrence McDonald, who actually you used to work with, right?
I know.
You still do work with, right? Yeah. What am I saying? I mean, he correctly says that China is not necessarily engaged in talks with us. I mean, I think there's some debate about that, right? Trump has claimed they've been discussing things, but
and this goes back to where when Trump has a history of not always telling the truth, that people don't necessarily, believe whether or not, and he's creating this, and I think Besson used the term like, strategic uncertainty. I'm
right.
like, come on, man. And like, I don't know. It's just,
but what does he mean here when he says CNN's claiming this
Horny
narrative
chest.
that they're not talking to us, but then he's saying that bonds are speaking a far different narrative fact? Like what is, he's basically saying that Trump is not lying. I guess that's the vibe that I'm getting from reading this post.
What else? Go scroll down there a little bit more, Paul. I don't.
All eyes on the big.
I mean, look, the Chinese bomb.
All
the
over
Chinese
this AM correlation on the rise. The economic stress value is picking up steam.
I mean, the reality is the Chinese bond market has been very robust, and part of that's been China has been able to attract flows into their bond market. Part of it is they have no inflation, they have to have deflation, and so the Chinese 10-year bond is I don't look at the yield, certainly still sub 2%. I don't know exactly what point. Yes, and we're above 4. So there's a massive difference here between where our yields are in America versus where China's yields are, and so.
I think the difference in those bond markets too just reflects the fiscal situation. I mean, our bond market's in trouble because of the debt. I mean, the elephant in the room that Trump and Bassett are wrestling with is that we really look like an emerging market economy. I mean, we've got arguably a weak stock market as our economy slows down. We've got a weak bond market as fewer and fewer people trust our government to do the responsible thing regarding printing money. And we've got enormous and growing deficits in spite of the best efforts of Doge. And so I think when you look at those 3 things, that's what happens when you have, a sovereign debt crisis and emerging market currency. We've also got the dollar. I mean, the thing we haven't mentioned that I think is really important, I'm sure Craig is focused on it as well. We've also got the dollar off a lot. The dollar was 109 at the end of the year. It's down to 99 now. That's a big move, 10% in one quarter. And so if you're, and a lot of the money that was in our market is foreign money. I mean, there's a net, I don't know, what is it, Craig, $12 trillion of foreign investment in our equity markets. And it could be larger than that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, the equity markets are down. They were down at one point, 10, 15, 20%. They bounced back a bit. But, you get a declining market, and then you get a weaker dollar. And suddenly, these people are losing both ways, because when they convert back to their home currency, they've got to say the market's down 10% and say the dollar's down 10%. Well, that means they're taking a 20% loss in their own currency. And so, that kind of becomes reflexive where they think, well, gee, if that trend continues, do I really want to be in dollar-based assets, in the United States? I think the answer is no. And so, my great concern, what I'm watching, I'm watching all these things like a hawk, but the one that's most interesting to me right now is the stock market. Can the stock market find its feet and start to hang in around here or start to climb? I think I'm skeptical.
You're skeptical.
Count me as they broke the glass, and the economy's slowing down. The earnings estimates are all going to have to be revised downward. And as they're revised downward, this was a market that was priced for perfection, was very happy with Trump. And I think, reality is going to be, despite his best efforts, Trump is not going to be able to deliver everything promised. And as the market comes to realize that, it's going to not like it, and the equity market's going to go down. When the equity market goes down, that makes people poorer. That slows the economy down further. That becomes reflexive. I mean, to me, this is a bubble, very much like it was the everything bubble. It was very much like the 2020 bubble, and the 28 bubble and the 2000 bubble. And when bubbles burst, they tend to go back to their base level. And Hussman says we'd have to go down 65% for the general stock market to enter the range of quote unquote normal valuations. Well, think about what a 65% decline in the stock market would do to this country. I mean, the top 10% of the country owns 84% of the bonds. Percent's told us this, or stocks, and they also account for 50% of the spending. So if you tell everybody who's in that cohort that their retirement account just got cut in half, guess what? They're not going to buy cars. They're not going to renovate the house. They're not going to travel. They're not going to eat out. They're not going to do all kinds of things. And so, Bissett and Trump are thinking to themselves, well, this is okay. I mean, the stock market goes down. Those aren't the guys who voted for us. We wanted the middle class. We got them, and they voted us in. And I mean, the average guy doesn't own stocks. The average American doesn't own stocks. And so the stock market goes down. That's not a big deal to him. But when it becomes a big deal to him? When the plant that he works for has less demand, and he loses his job. And so, sadly, in trying to fix all this, doing the right things, I mean, this could really turn the politics against these guys in 2 years, and then even worse in 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's what I fear. Yeah.
I mean, look, we've talked about this for years, right? That we've been, America's been overspending, over-consuming. Stock market has been over-earning. Margins have been too high. The money printing has run rampant, right? And so eventually we would come back to some sort of reality, or one would be imposed on us. And so if you had like maybe a continuation of the Biden administration, Biden 2.0 or Harris, whatever, we would have just maybe continued along the same path of deficit spending and strong stock market and tech outperformance and U.S. exceptionalism, perhaps. But eventually it would lead to such grotesque, even more grotesque wealth inequality that the 99% would eventually rise up and burn the whole thing down. And so Trump comes in with the idea that, well, we have to do something eventually. Let's do it now. Let's do it on our own terms where we still have more control over it. But I think they're quickly realizing that this everything bubble, as it starts to unravel, can unravel really fast because the money printing has been so excessive for so long. And so you have all these things going on at once. We've hollowed out the manufacturing trust. We're trying to bring it back. The deficits are out of control. The stock market's overvalued. We've had, the U.S. equity market capitalization is 65% of global equity market capitalization versus, GDP in the 20%. So we've attracted all this capital. Now it's all going the other way. We're losing trust with foreigners. So once you lose the trust, it really never comes back. And so you're going to have this outflow of capital from the U.S., from U.S. assets. Trump's going to try to encourage those companies to invest domestically in plants and equipment, which he'll have some success, right? Hyundai's putting a plant here. Honda's putting a plant here. TMC's putting a plant here. TSM's putting a plant here. But
Samsung.
But even
it's
consider,
Samsung. But it's harder to get them to do that when you treat their money like shit.
and even saying that they're going to do that, as you and I know, saying you're going to do a plant here and actually spending the money to have the plant here, it's a multi-year thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm accused of being a doomster, but I got to tell you, the macroeconomic outlook from my point of view is really, really bleak. I mean, and so.
What could change your mind? That's I was going to ask you. And I was going to ask you the same thing when you read the stock reports today.
What could change my
Earnings
mind?
outperformed.
Oh, just unbelievable productivity gains out of AI. Maybe other countries stumbling even worse than us. China falling apart even faster.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that could change my mind on the stock market, although I still think it'll go lower. What I envision, what I wrote in the book, and what I still strongly believe is that these conditions, as they unravel, are going to force the Fed's hand because the markets are going to become discontinuous at some point. The third mandate is going to kick in. They're going to be forced to print money, and in fact, it's going to be a big print. It's going to be bigger than the last couple of prints.
Should write a book about that.
Somebody should, and when that
someone's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it, and when that happens, we'll probably get a bounce in the market, and and maybe a bounce in economic activity. But don't get me wrong; it'll be highly inflationary, and so.
What makes you think this? It's not like they've never done this before, though. Like they've never just printed 5 times, 20 times more than they printed last time. I mean, there's no history of that.
No, there's no history of it, exactly. And so, I mean, I think this one will be, they did in COVID, I think they printed between 5 and 7, depends on how you measure it, in 18 months. I suspect this one will be bigger than that, and the time frame might be shorter. But again, Powell needs the political cover to do that. There's no way he maintains his vocal reputation if he does that in a preemptive way, or if he starts cutting now, and that's why he's dragging his feet. But I actually think Besant's probably trying to force his hand, and I think more importantly, I think markets are going to force his hand. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear your view, Craig. I mean, if they start cutting, do you think there's any way this stock market gains a footing and doesn't unravel in the way I'm describing? I mean, say Fed policy gets a lot looser. Do you think they can kind of get the thing to be stable and inflationary versus what I view as pretty nasty?
I don't really think so.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think what'll wind up happening, I think we're going to get markets are going to correct from here for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I think we're going to, get to a level. Oil's going to keep falling. Inflation will, we'll start to see some bad payroll prints.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Fed will cut rates probably in June, and kind of begin that cutting cycle. So we'll fall into the point where the Fed put is activated.
Right.
We'll rally back on that expectation and actual reality of the first rate cut. And then we'll start making really much lower lows as the markets don't really appreciate the cutting cycle, or the cutting cycle doesn't work, right? Because it's not right now. The cost of capital is not the deterrent to economic activity. It's the uncertainty that's the deterrent. And so until there's more certainty, businesses and consumers are not going to feel ready to spend. So that rate cutting cycle, you don't want to buy the first rate cut. You buy the last rate cut, right? So I think that's going to be something that's with us through much of the summer and into the fall.
Potentially longer, don't you think?
Yeah, look, I think the best thing that we could probably do would be to somehow
buy Bitcoin.
Sorry, guys. Somehow get interest rates for average Americans and for companies down materially without having that excess liquidity find its way back into asset markets. So you need to do something out there, which is not really being talked about right now. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's higher capital gains taxes. Maybe it's financial transaction tax. Maybe it's something to discourage the speculation, because it's clear that the speculation is what has led to the bubble and the inflation that is screwing more and more people in this economy every day. So you can bring rates down to help get credit card rates down from 25% to something more manageable for the average American. But if we just take rates down and the stock market goes back to 8,000 again, and property price, real estate never falls, and oil goes back to 150 because the dollar at DXY is at 60, that's not a good thing. So they need to also do something to kind of funnel the money from these lower rates into the real economy. So this isn't being discussed. That's my concern, is that they're going to cut rates, and we're going to go right to the hyperinflation. Because
the Federal Reserve has a fancy solution that they just came up with out of Harvard Economic Academy. It's called PRINT, PRINT.
Yeah.
It's this
Look,
personal interest
it's-
repo,
it's
troubled asset relief program.
So that's my concern. That's why I would have preferred throughout this whole thing that they were more aggressive on the balance sheet first rather than raising rates, because that would have made it harder to see speculative gains. And so I hope they continue with QT and not adding to the Fed's balance sheet while they're taking rates down. They need to make it so it's harder for people to just speculate. They need to get it so the average American's credit card rate goes down, mortgage rates go down, but not all that excess liquidity finds itself into asset prices, because that is the wealth inequality issue that is plaguing this country. And that's how you get populist revolts. That's how you get revolutions, is when the proletariat are like, enough, like, we're done, like, sorry. And so I hope we don't get there, but I don't think the odds are zero. That's the ultimate, that's the ultimate outcome. So,
Well, I think there's no doubt that if the stock market falls hard, unemployment goes up, and we have inflation, so that we have kind of an inflationary depression, this country's going to explode. This country's going to explode.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
people were already upset. This is going to upset them beyond belief, right?
Yeah, look, I think they have I don't think it's all lost cause. I think closing the border is a smart idea, because it should, in theory, prevent companies from engaging in massive layoffs, because you would be then fearful that, well, when things recover and the economy is more stable, whatever it is, that you're not getting these people back, because there is no labor force growth, right? And so hopefully, if we keep the border relatively closed, companies don't lay everybody off while we're going through this. We also have corporate margins that are still record highs, so companies really should be able to take some of the pain here. Now, it's bad for the stock market, right? Clearly, and there's a lot of the government tax receipts that are funded by stock market gains. But we could navigate this. My concern is that, and we already saw this 2 weeks ago, is when shit starts to hit the fan, the flinch is always in the direction of printing, right? It's just the easier. It's just always the easier thing, and so. Look, I mean, it's very possible that we'll just go right to zero on rates. They'll start to do QE again, and the DXY will go to 60, and gold will get revalued to 30,000, and Bitcoin will be 250 to 500,000, and then average American. Then what? Then we have this inflationary depression where nobody can afford basic necessities. We haven't built back any of the supply chain yet, so. We're still kind of beholden to everybody else.
Listening to you speak, one of the things that kind of popped into my head is an interesting theory, and I don't know if they could do it. I know that people give me shit for this, but one thing they could do, and I talked about this in the book, is they could enact usury laws. They could say the banks. Let's face it, and they'd have maybe phase them in over time, so they give banks time. I mean, people say the banks ought to be able to charge 25% because that allows them to make loans to riskier borrowers. Well, bullshit. Riskier borrowers shouldn't get a loan if they can't. I mean, 25% on an interest on a credit card is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's crumbling.
It's insane though. But the thing is, like, what is your other option at that point? I mean, I know so many people that are like living on their credit cards, and they didn't have that. There'd probably be riots in the streets.
Well, I get it, but I mean, the government could come back. I mean, there was a time in this country, in the 60s and 70s when, charging more than 10% was considered usurious.
Yeah.
Okay?
I mean, it definitely is usurious. There's no doubt about that.
Right. You'd have to give the credit card company some time to transition and get rid of the more marginal customers, and you have to do workouts with a lot of people who are deeply in debt. But,
I mean, why not do a wealth transfer to the poorest people directly by just having, if the government's going to print money, might as well just pay off the debt for the poor people. I mean, wouldn't that make the most fucking sense?
Well, that's my point.
Like, if they're going to do it,
I mean, the PPP,
give it right to the people.
And the PPP,
who really,
they gave the money to the business people.
It was insane.
These people
they fucking printed $20,000 per head and gave everybody $1,400. What happened to the other $18,000 per head?
In a lot of cases, the people who got that 20 had a successful business. They didn't need it. It was ridiculous.
It's a scam. And then so many well-connected people. I know so many people who got so much fucking money that did not fucking need it. That were like, they just went to their lawyers and their fucking accountants and they.
Here's
it was
Tom
a
Brady.
giant
Tom Brady
scam. Yeah, well, you didn't even do it. I mean, you just go to your lawyer and your accountant, and they just fucking they know how to do it. And it's a scam for them because they get a kickback.
Here's another one for you guys. I mean, in terms of public policy that you could do to maybe help, and it pains me to say that Elizabeth Warren ever said anything that was right, but she did one time.
No.
Once. And
no.
You know what it was?
No.
I mean, so if the government's going to print money or the government's going to give beneficence, fine. Yeah. They were lending to the banks at 50 basis points under ZIRP, and students were paying 6% on their student debt. I mean, the government could say, hey, we're going to subsidize all that student debt. We're going to take that down to 0% interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, those kinds of, if they're going to print money and give it out, direct it where it actually helps
Yeah.
the poor people
you
who
need
need
QE for the people, right?
Exactly.
Did you guys ever
need
read the
QE
book
for
Debt:
bank.
The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber?
Yeah, it's a great book.
It's a great book. I mean, I
I
didn't.
mean, he's a social liberal.
I didn't agree
Yeah.
with a lot of his
No, neither did I.
with a lot of his final end conclusions. He did present a really interesting historical narrative,
Yeah.
but what he talks about through history is that like there's cycles of this. It's almost like this fourth turning cycle. But what a lot of these kings and people did throughout history was they did exactly what you
Well,
just
it's a-
said.
it's a
They
jubilee.
wiped out the usury and the debt of the poor people.
It's a
Yeah,
jubilee.
yeah,
It's a jubilee.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
And one could argue that, I mean, if you are going to print money,
Yeah.
give it to the poorest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't give it to the PPP. Don't give it
Uh-huh.
to Wall Street so they can go lever the shit out of stuff so that Schwartzman can become worth 20 billion instead of 10. I mean, it's ridiculous,
Yeah,
right?
you're not wrong.
Don't give it to Christy Mack, John Mack's wife, who borrowed $220 billion non-recourse.
Yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
The problem, that's one of the issues that I think the administration. There's no voice. There's no real voice for the renter class, the debted class, the
Yeah.
people. Right?
Correct.
Like Trump
Well,
claims to
The
be.
sad thing is Bernie Sanders and
there
AOC
is
are
a voice. It's Bernie.
No, so
Yeah.
so you
but he's incompetent.
But
and
you
ignorant. I mean,
need
it's
you
like-
need you do need somebody like a Bernie, or kind of that voice in the administration, just saying, look, like these are the people that really need help. The people you're helping here by not raising the millionaire tax. I mean, like it's backwards. Like so,
Right.
there's no billionaires that are speaking on behalf. There's no altruistic billionaires that are saying this is fucked. We do need to do things that we're suggesting here. Otherwise, we're going to have a violent fourth turning. There's no voice
Yes.
for that. There's no rich voice for the people. It's more like
That's correct.
the Elons and the Bessents and the Lutnicks who are billionaires who are wealthy and who have wealthy friends, and Powell who are saying who go to the country club or the new $500,000 a year Trump club in DC, and all talk to each other and want to keep each other kind of propped up. There's no voice there, and I don't know how we institute that voice. Maybe it's folks like you and me, Larry, but whatever it is, right? We're not close enough to the seat of power to actually.
Sadly,
enact
we're not.
any change, so.
And look, I mean, and Bernie is kind of that voice, but he's really, really flawed because he's such a socialist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he does
identify the problem,
but he
the
does.
solution
He
is
has
like
identified the
terrible.
problem correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that the poor have been badly taken advantage of.
Yeah, and then we have a corporatocracy in this country,
Exactly.
and unfortunately, look, back in 2016, Bernie Bros were similar to the Trump people, right? There was a coordinated message there, one from the left.
I mean,
one from the right.
look, there are targeted things you could do that I think most of the country would support. And in general, I'm not a fan of taxes at all, but I mean, you could very easily do, kind of a luxury consumption tax, right? I mean, we live in Naples. I saw these people driving around in Bentleys. I mean, you could very easily say, look, any car that costs more than $100,000, there's a serious tax on that. You know what I mean?
There's going to be a lot of cars costing $99,999 at the end of the day.
And as I say, that's not really the solution because I'm not a fan of taxes. But the point is, even the people who drive those cars, I think they would actually prefer to pay that tax and not have a chance of riots in the street and getting shot at,
Right.
versus not paying that tax and having society fall apart, which we're kind of on the cusp of, in my opinion. Do you agree,
No,
Craig?
I totally agree. I
mean,
agree.
I know, I don't drive a car. My car's worth $38,000, but my point is, there's got to be a way of creating a more fair society. There just has to be.
I totally agree. But when you hear,
if only there was like a globally decentralized money that
wouldn't it be amazing?
wealthy politicians could just print out of thin air.
well,
and,
like, you think about it,
continually increase the wealth inequality gap.
But in a way, Bitcoin actually obviously is going to make it harder, right? Because folks here, rich folks who are worried about these taxes or whatever, may just put their money in Bitcoin and leave, right? Which, whatever, but that's the reality. I mean, we've created, Bitcoin has been created. It's something you have to deal with. And so.
Having said that, though, I just saw something on Twitter the other day. I think it's accurate. You realize if your first stimmy check was $1,400 and you'd put it in Bitcoin,
Worth like 10,000, 20,000 today.
22,000
as of right now.
22,000 today.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, protecting your life's energy, your work energy, right? The worker class over time instead of having that debased. Because the main problem is that the last thing to go up in society when the money's printed and trickles down to the plebs is wages. Like, that's the last thing that goes up, right? So if you have a hard money, they have more optionality, they have more choices, they have more time. That life energy can be protected, right?
Right.
It goes further. A deflationary thing, the costs of goods and things, instead of ever increasing in a rat wheel, those costs are going down over time, right? So you can have a same wage or even the wage going down, but the cost of goods and productivity gains are so important and flow through to the money that the cost of everything goes down over time, right? Which is a crazy thing for people to think about. But I mean, that's how it worked during some of the most, wealthy best periods of human history and civilization.
I also think this idea that your house is your savings vehicle is bullshit. We need to get rid of that mentality completely.
Yeah.
In America, it is a flawed mentality. It is completely screwed over.
It's gotten a monetary premium when it's something that people need to live and survive.
The meme I love on that one is the guy holding the kid up to dunk the basketball, saying, you know, me thinking I'm a good real estate investor,
right?
And the guy holding the kid is inflation, and the kid's dunking the ball.
And we talked about this earlier. I mean, I was on the plane coming back the other day, and I was talking about this on the plane. Is like, I'm lucky to be a millennial and buying my house 7 years ago, and just like it's tripled, quadrupled in value. And like I know friends who like they can't buy a house, like they can't.
And as you pointed out, you got a mortgage in the twos.
Yeah, I mean,
today everyone's paying 7, 6,
yeah,
6,
it's like
8.
It's not. I mean, it's really not fair, right? It's
the Fed has exacerbated that because the Fed bought trillions of dollars of mortgage-backed securities in order to save the banks, right? This is the problem. Like the banks.
Not to even to mention those who got all the PPP money and loans and the BlackRocks of the world. What do you think they were buying? Houses, property, single family.
Average home appreciated
unbelievable.
Since February 2020. Average home appreciated 47% from February 2020 until February 2025.
Which is kind of in line with the money that's been printed.
It's It really is unbelievable when you actually. I think
correlation
on our series, the series I recorded with Dominic Frisby on his book Daylight Robbery. He has there's a point and a stat that he gave that is so unbelievable. It basically talks about how the cost of a house increased over like an 800-year period of sound money, and it was like 0.4% per year, and then like the last like 50 to 70 years, you just watch it. It's like it goes up an average of like 20% a year, something just absolutely absurd and insane. So you just like look at this period where like houses were valuable, right? They were property. They kind of held value, maybe went up a little bit if it's good real estate, but they weren't like what people were using to store value. So there's all these perverse incentives and effects from a broken money.
And imagine
why we
if
go
all
back
that
to
money
fix the money,
had
fix the
been
world.
invested in companies that were making things more efficient.
More productive.
I mean, when you think about what this world could be right now,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, so we pissed away $8 trillion in the Middle East in order to secure Iraq so they could pump oil for the Chinese, in order to take Afghanistan and give it back with a lot of equipment. I mean, if that $8 trillion had been spent on high-speed rail and nuclear power in the United States, instead of paying 31 cents, which is what I pay per kilowatt hour in Massachusetts, one of the highest in the country, and everywhere in the country now, the averages I think are coming up on 12, 13, 14 cents a kilowatt. It would be a half of that if we were running off a nuclear power grid, but we didn't invest in that.
Sound money doesn't allow that to even happen in the first place.
Well,
and that's what's so sickening and disgusting about the whole thing is that if we were on a Bitcoin standard or even a gold standard, that wouldn't be possible because the government wouldn't be able to fund that and steal it through inflation.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, it's amazing we live as well as we do, and I really credit that to all the productivity gains we got out of the microprocessor. I mean, the microprocessor has really, I mean, it's stunning. I mean, you look at AI, you look at what we can do now. I mean, think of what an accountant had to do by hand. We can now do it on a spreadsheet in seconds. I mean, it's amazing, and all that's fantastic, and yet we pissed it all away in doing all this stupid money printing and these stupid wars and stupid malinvestment. And I mean, we could all be living much better lives, and our kids will be living much better lives if, as in the book I lay out, we eventually return to sound money. And the bad news and the good news is the bad news is going to be painful to do it. The good news is the system's so broken and the trends are so strong that we're going to be forced to do it within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, right?
No doubt about it.
Yeah. Then I think the question is, should it happen sooner, or should we draw it out? Right? It's like, do you want to try to V-bottom this, or
that's the rip the Band-Aid versus the slow bleed. I mean, and
the sad part is
you can make arguments for both ways, right?
I would say the slow bleed is probably preferable, just because people have a chance to kind of get off the ship and they start to, whereas if you rip the Band-Aid off, a lot of people. There's a lot of potential political disruption, violence. Like it really. I don't know.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be messy either way.
Yeah,
and my guess is we're going to see a little bit of both. I guess we'll probably see more of the slow bleed, and then at some point, it is going to become a crisis.
Yeah.
And it's going to Gresham's law will kick in. Everyone will say there's smoke in this theater. Everyone will want out at the same time, and the whole damn steaming pile of shit's going to collapse. I mean, yeah. It's going to be like Soviet Russia, right? It's going to collapse. Yeah. And
but I think you are finally seeing this end of U.S. Treasury asset hegemony, right?
Oh, yeah.
That is the difference this time than in prior crises, is that there is a legitimate non-dollar, non-treasury financial system that's being created. It's being revolved largely around gold at this point, and China's playing it, and Saudi's playing it, and Russia's playing it, and
largely around gold, but with Bitcoin making a really strong performance.
For sure. But I'm saying as central banks are storing away, and so you're seeing finally that the U.S.'s profligate spending ways are actually, people are like, this isn't like we're trading like an emerging market, and interest rates are higher, and inflation is not going away, and the dollar is weakening, and if it weakens more, we're going to have more imported inflation.
Well, we're going to lose this empire in the same way that Britain lost its empire, and it could be relatively bloodless. I mean, although they lost it in World War I, but it could be relatively bloodless and relatively peaceful if we do it intelligently and just transition from here to sound money, which I think we can do with a reset. But will our leaders be enlightened enough, and will people understand it?
I think we can keep our empire if we transition to Bitcoin as this global reserve.
I don't want to keep our empire.
Yeah.
No.
You don't want to keep the empire.
No, I really don't, because I think it's when I define the empire as 500 bases all over the world.
Yeah. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about
military power and
I'm talking about the shining house on the hill where we've got true free capitalism, and everybody wants to. The soft power, right? Like this idea where other countries that's what I want.
Being a beacon of freedom and honesty and fairness. Setting the standard, which
we had for so long. That's what I want.
Absolutely, and I think we can regain that. I mean, the book talks about this. I mean, in 1946, this country stood at the top of the world, literally at the top of the world. We had built a fabulous system, and sadly, just like so many things, when you're successful, you get complacent, you make mistakes. CIA got in control. Started killing people in other countries.
The regime change, all this.
They murdered our president.
It's all a result.
It's a slippery slope, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. You've got presidents are getting blowjobs in the White House. I mean, it's just
I've seen presidents do worse things, but I hear you.
Obviously, but but my point is, it's like
if we could stick to that and not do the wars, I'd be happy.
It's just one new low after another. That was trivial compared to. Launching a war in Iraq and killing 500,000 Iraqis and damaging a lot of American soldiers and pissing away trillions of dollars. I mean,
so all for nothing essentially.
Yeah. Also, that Dick Cheney could make a fortune on his Halliburton stock and retire in Wyoming. I mean, that's it's disgusting. But
I haven't read your book, but do you touch on the fourth turning at all?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, it's actually right in the very couple first.
Yeah,
it's
heavily referenced.
It's heavily
referenced.
This
crisis era.
Oh, this is a fourth turning. Yeah, in my view, it started in 2008. They tend to last between 20 and 30 years. 30 being the longest. 20 years would put us at 2028. I'm not sure we wrap it up in the next 3 years. I kind of think we don't, but I don't think it goes to 2038. I think the monetary system gets severely or massively restructured between 2028 and 2035, because, and the way I see it, just for what it's worth, the way I see it unfolding, sadly, I think Trump doesn't get it done. He moves things in the right direction, but it doesn't get it done. The other side promises all kinds of stimmies and bennies and everything else, and so Team Blue wins in 4 years. Stephanie Kelton is now the Treasury Secretary. Andrew Yang is Andrew Yang is VP.
AOC is president.
AOC is president, whatever, Bernie. We go to universal basic income, and we just print like crazy, and we totally destroy the dollar, and the currency fails sometime in there.
While we're on that
is
very
wild.
Optimistic, inspiring subject, I just want to play Bill Gates' most recent take.
Let's see what Bill Gates has to say.
Given that we're trending towards automation, he thinks we might not be needed.
People are like, wow, this is a bit scary. It's completely new territory.
I mean, will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide. I mean, people are like, wow.
But you say we'll decide how many humans we need. I mean, he's obviously on a comedy show. He's
Yeah.
joking, but
I mean, I saw some. I saw there was I forget who put it out, but it was maybe it was Luke. I forget. Some article about 80 to 90% of teachers and doctors, and may not be needed within 5 years.
Wow.
Lawyers. Lawyer. I mean, there's a lot of white collar jobs that are certainly at threat of extinction. And look, there's various folks who say, look, throughout the history, we've had these productivity enhancements, and we're going to eliminate all the jobs, and jobs always came back stronger and stronger. And I'm loath to say it's different this time, but man, it's different in the way that it seems like this is the first time we're really going after white collar jobs as opposed to blue collar jobs in a way that you may have this just massive wage destruction from the societal. Maybe everyone will still have a job, but you won't be making six figures anymore being a junior lawyer because an AI bot could do that for free. So
yeah, I think lawyers are at great risk. I mean, I heard some people talking about it who are very familiar with how all that works, and they said that a law school hiring could drop by 50 to 75%. Do you know what I mean? Because you can tell them, write this contract, and it comes out incredibly well. You just don't need as many lawyers. But having said all that, I mean, to be against productivity improvements would be a Luddite, right? I mean, obviously buggy whip makers got put out of business. They got jobs on the assembly line, and somebody will need to program this AI. Somebody will need to make things happen. And actually,
who's going to build the underwater cities and explore space and colonize the moon and colonize Mars?
I don't think you're going to have an AI plumber. You know what I mean? I think there's always going to be somebody who needs to figure out how to come into your house and work through the issues and repair your plumbing. So I think actually blue collar people might be advantaged with versus white collar.
So I think there's this blue collar, white collar shift. And so maybe we need to start raising wages for plumbers and electricians.
Well, I think that's going to happen.
Teachers and
that's already kind of happened, Craig. I know a couple of plumbers in my town. It's stunning what these guys make.
Yeah,
what's funny,
and rightly so. They should. You know.
Yeah, no doubt. What's funny is that history often rhymes but doesn't repeat. But reading Dominic's book, there's a period of time after the Black Death where so many people died that the blue collar class and if you think about it now, population, they're saying population decline is a major thing, right? Where and there aren't these jobs, these blue collar jobs aren't people aren't going that way. They're going to get a basket weaving about gender diversity degree that's financed by the U.S. taxpayer for $500,000 at Harvard or whatever, right? And then wondering why is the government giving these loans that have no recourse that literally are worthless? During that time period, the blue collar class got extremely wealthy, started having real coin, real money. They were essentially serfs before the Black Death, but after the Black Death, it was we needed people to do those jobs, and that was where the demand was, and they got very, very wealthy, and there was a lot of conflict there. So it's interesting to see. I think
we just had an analogous Black Death with COVID. The problem is that we printed so much money and just gave it right back to the wealthy, right? To your point, if we would have, and this sounds horrible, but if we would have kind of really thought about this a lot better during COVID, we actually could have created a much better society. We did lose millions and millions of people globally, and it's a horrible tragedy. But by giving the money to all the rich people and the corporations, we made our problem worse for the people who stuck around in a way. And now we have to, now we got to go fix that again. And we're not, hopefully we don't go through another COVID or World War III or something other, that destroys population to create that environment. But
the COVID thing was just outrageous. I mean, businesses. I mean, if you're going to save businesses, my view was always, fine. You've got a restaurant, you've got a transportation company, you've got a restaurant, an airline, or a hotel. Fine, bail them out. We're telling people they can't travel. Those business, everybody else, it just. I mean, as you say, I know a lot of business people who got money they did not need.
Yeah,
and it was a gift. It was literally a gift.
And you think about those business people, what about the big corporations and companies that have got teams of lawyers that are cantillionaires connected? They know every little, BlackRock going buying up all these private homes and stuff during the crisis is imagine how much of the money that they siphoned off.
Tom Brady got, money. I mean, I think Oprah got money. Serious money.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Crazy.
She didn't need it.
Unbelievable, right? It's that should never happen. That's just total. I mean, it's literally fraudulent, I think, personally, but
well, I mean,
the problem is the system was set up to allow it.
That's the thing. I mean, it's a very it puts a person in a very difficult position because it's kind of like I mean, personally, if it happened to me, I don't think I would have taken it, just on general principle. But I can see where people would say, well, shit, it's there and I can get it and I'm not breaking any laws. You know, give it to me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it's legal, maybe not ethical, but legal, right? So, in the words of Mark Zuckerberg back in the day, way back in the day, saying, "I don't care if it's ethical, I only care if it's legal."
Oh, really?
That's what he had said. That was what was going to come out in the Discovery with the Winklevoss twins when he was
not his finest hour.
Yeah, they got the laptop with all the chats, and that, like, they were going to post that in the Discovery.
Yeah.
That's why he settled the deal with the Winklevoss twins.
He's got
apparently,
a banger interview with Theo Vaughn.
Does he?
Listen, it's hilarious.
Oh, I'm gonna have to give it a
Who's
listen.
Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Theo Von
maybe
is
he's seeing the
the
light.
funniest
Yeah.
human alive. Guys, just a reminder for everyone listening. First of all, thank you. We've got 4,000 plus live listeners. And we just want to remind everyone that we're giving away a free ticket to the Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin 2025 in Vegas. If you want to be there, we will.
Courtesy
And
of
if you-
Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club. So thank you, Bitcoin Ben, for giving away these tickets.
Yes. The way to win this ticket is to comment or question, top question, top comment has a chance at winning this ticket. In addition to a separate giveaway to the Bitcoin Day Tampa event coming up in June. So go ahead and comment any question you have or just any input you want to contribute. On that subject, we do have a few comments here that I'll throw your way. Somebody
Can you
said-
put up the live chat? Is that possible?
So for some reason, when I break away the live chat window, it does not load. So we're having some problems right now with a Twitter chat not
Working.
appearing. So I'm gonna just read it. The one question was, with blockchains showing strength in the world of supply chains, do you think Bitcoin will ever play a role in manufacturing in the USA? And another comment is that Neuralink and OpenAI might be the next economic boom that saves us. So just on that subject of, can we grow ourselves out of this problem? Just thinking about Neuralink in and of itself, imagine China had that technology, right? We would be, I think, more impressed than we are. It's truly, in my opinion, it's revolutionary.
I have there's a post I tagged that's talking about actually what the recent ALS patient had where he was nonverbal. It's somewhere probably way up at the top. So this is so this guy right here got a I guess he couldn't talk, he could never communicate, and he's nonverbal, and I guess he's able to use his brain now to type, and this is his post. This is him posting on X using his brain to post,
cool.
right? Which is kind of extremely wild. And kind of the video is really cool. Walks you through it, but there's a post that I snagged that has details about this. It was a take by, I think it's Vittorioso. Can you Paul? It's probably like the fourth or fifth take all the way at the top. So if you go back, and he kind of just talks about the implications of this, which are kind of wild. I mean, like, if you really think about stuff that it's just almost hard to imagine, right? Like, if you go back 100 years and like you show somebody all the stuff we have today, like, it would look like magic. They just wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Let's see here. You might have scrolled past it already. I want to say it was queued up at like almost the very top, like just one of the first 5 posts. You're down like hundreds of posts now.
On that subject, this does bring about the question of what skills will the average person possess to compete in a market
Scroll
as
down.
such, right? Is there going to have to be this UBI income essentially that has to support the working class that no longer has competitive skill sets? Is that going to be a thing, or is there going to be a new wave of various new jobs that emerge because of this technology, right? That's, I guess, what is yet to be determined. Or are we just going to put Neuralink chimps in all of those Salvadorian prisoners and have mass
Scroll down.
manufacturing at unprecedented levels?
Scroll down a little bit here. Let's find this post.
I mean, the key productivity enhancement that we need is
scroll down a little bit more.
Is like a nuclear fusion type thing, right? We need to make a massive move on lowering energy costs globally. I think that would be the real productivity unlock that we need, and we should be spending tons and tons of money trying to get there because that has the most bang for the buck. If we can go to basically a free energy society, I think that would be the big thing. It just seems like that's not in the near term cards, and unfortunately it seems like the way things are going, we're gonna go through the big print and monetary reset before we get this productivity utopia, right? And so that's the
problem.
I think that's the issue. These other things are nice, right? I mean, but I don't think we're going to get that step change in productivity that makes this transition easy, and it's just not coming. It's just not coming fast enough.
I completely agree. I mean, unfortunately, the print issue is bearing down on us hard and fast, and it'll happen before we get these other things. But there's no time to be wasted. I mean, we need a Marshall Plan on all of these other things. I mean, if you're going to have a federal government, that we need an industrial policy to fix a lot of what's wrong.
Yeah, I don't know where the post is, Paul. I thought it was at the very top, but
Why
I
don't you just
saw it earlier when you were up at the
Give
top.
me,
I don't
give
know
me
if it
the
got
name and I'll
untagged.
search it out.
I think it's like Vittorioso, VIT. Right there, Vittorio. Nope. When you just type in VIT, there it is, that first one. Yeah, he had an interesting take about the ALS and the Neuralink thing, and just the implications are almost hard to kind of imagine. If you're going too fast, you're going to miss it. See if you can find his ALS post. He was talking about the guy with ALS and just talking about really what's happening with the breakthroughs that have occurred. And he kind of like lays out the implications of some of this stuff over the next decade are just really hard for people to even imagine the capability of like just kind of like taking AI and like being able to just instantly, like now we're typing in the thing and we're voice texting, but like to be able to like think something and then just like have here's what he put. He's like, I don't think people realize what this means. A nonverbal ALS patient just used a brain-computer interface to type, browse, and communicate just by thinking. Real human, real brain signals, real machine loop. And this is the worst it'll ever be. Today's BCIs, which are the brain interfaces, are the neural equivalent of the telegraph, but it works. And once it works, the curve bends fast. Think about what happened between the telegraph and the iPhone. Now imagine it happening to BCIs. We're about to rewrite the boundary between mind and world, and most of what's coming would sound too unrealistic even in a sci-fi movie. Near future, thought to text at full speed, 100 plus words per minute, 150 plus words per minute, brain-controlled AR interfaces, no hands, no keyboards, closed-loop brain stimulation, curing depression, PTSD, chronic pain, direct hypothalamic modulation, tuning mood, hunger, sleep from inside, memory prosthetics, restoring lost short-term recall, full body. I've seen some of that where they stimulated a part of someone's brain and like they had like what was it, like they couldn't what's it called, the dementia, and then they stimulated part of the brain and all of a sudden they were just like back to normal. Really wild. So there's full body telepresence, logging into robots, feeling through them. Neuralink patients are already controlling robotic arms, so this is happening fast. Thought to thought communication. Longer term AI mind merging with onboard co-pilots, recording and editing dreams, synthetic flow states at will, neuroimmune tuning, controlling inflammation, metabolism, aging from inside the brain. The mind is becoming programmable, and shit's about to get very, very interesting. So I just thought that was just kind of a wild take of just stuff to think about, right, for the future, which goes hand in hand with what we're talking about with new jobs that could potentially be created in the future. Is like we can't even like when people stopped using horses and went to cars, like they couldn't even imagine the airplane, going to the moon, going to space, creating rocket ships. Like it just, things accelerate, more specialization, more opportunities, more jobs, historically what we've seen.
Let me just understand this clearly though. So he's saying that there is an ALS patient who has some chip implanted in
the
his
Neuralink,
head
Elon's chip.
and is able to think something and have it go in.
Literally, yeah.
This has been proven,
seen. He's doing it right now. He's posting on X right now, literally using his brain.
It's hard not to be conspiratorial about this, though.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like the Trojan horse. You start with ALS, and then now we're programming mass.
I mean, the potential of the technology. But you could say the same thing for AI or any technology.
That is just like that is mind-boggling.
It is.
To me.
It really is mind-boggling.
If that is actually happening.
No, it's actually happening. Yeah.
It's been happening for over a year.
Is that right?
So, just to throw this question out there, because I think about this. In the age of Neuralink, are seed phrases safe? Right? If you have Neuralink and you think about your seed phrase, it's essentially,
Well, the idea is you're controlling your own Neuralink, right? Like
you've been listening to too much Jack Bruce.
He talks about that. Yeah. That's awesome. Good. Somebody's got to talk about it.
Yeah, very wild.
If you can, have your Bluetooth intercepted, your thoughts essentially can be picked up. But Neuralink, for the use case that it offers right now, these tragic situations where essentially revitalize us, give somebody another chance at life. for that in and of itself, this is a revolutionary technology, like a truly, once in a multi-century breakthrough that I think has the potential to open up a new industry altogether. And someone in the comments here, jokingly said, we could essentially skip the robots and just put these chips in dead people and revitalize them. Right? So we're like, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll have apes, with Neuralink exploring various galaxies, but it's just opening up another realm of possibilities that people have not quite comprehended yet.
Yeah. They've got they were doing the early experience on monkeys where they had them play a video game with their brain. So they were just like moving the pong, and the monkey was just sitting there like moving his pong to hit it, like just thinking about it, right? So they've been testing this stuff for the past 5 to 10 years, and like it's ready for prime time with some people that have handicaps or serious problems. So just want to like plant that idea in your head that like this, like, don't think that just because things are getting more productive, like we're not going to create more jobs and opportunities. Like history has proven over and over again, right, that like when technology changes and we have innovation, we have productivity gains. Yes, some jobs may go away, but what results is always usually more jobs, more specialization, more opportunities.
But that's fair. But the current banking and credit system is based on this existing suite of jobs that are going to go away. Yeah. And those people are going to default on their credit card loans and their mortgage loans, and then the banks have to eat. So it's if the productivity comes too quickly and these people all get displaced, then we have an issue. But if it comes too slowly, we also have an issue. So they got to nail the productivity. But I think broadly speaking, the print is coming before the productivity boom. And so, to your point about, should we have some sort of Marshall Plan? Should we have more state-directed capitalism now? I mean, we've had an unfettered capitalist society where the rich have gotten incredibly rich and richer.
Has it really been unfettered capitalism though, or in your book, it's crony capitalism essentially?
Well, it's gotten to its late stage, right? I mean, the most wealthy people continue to get more of the spoils. Corporations have basically unlimited power, and it's just not working for more and more people in the society. How do we transition back away from that in a way that's not socialism, but bears some resemblance to capitalism, but does it in a fairer way where there's redistribution of wealth that picks up more people in the society? I think we do need more of this state-directed capitalist approach where we're investing capital into these new in technology advancements and strategic industries, but I don't know if that's
I'm mixed on that, because state implies statism and it implies centralization, and and it can be corrupted. I mean, enlightened state would be great, but unfortunately we've seen how that doesn't really work.
The free market will signal the incentive of the opportunities. That's I think what we've gotten to is crony capitalism to the extreme.
But during World War II, I mean, we ran a wartime economy to win a war, and
they did a
pretty good job doing it. So I don't know that
because they had honest people who knew it was an existential threat, like Knudsen and others. I mean, they basically went to Detroit and told the whole auto industry, you guys are going to build munitions, and and those guys did it. And I look, I don't disagree with you, Craig, that I mean. But
like the Keynesians, after that was all over, they said, hey, like the economy's fucked, everything's done. Like, hey, the government's not going to be telling everybody what to do anymore. And then what preceded that was actually the 4 or 5 year period after that, where we stopped doing the price controls and stopped doing the bullshit, was probably one of the most like productive and growth minded 4 to 5 year period in human history for any civilization ever.
The demographics were good too. Yeah, I mean, look, with respect to the power, I mean, if the government would just get out of the way, I mean, I think part of the reason why nuclear hasn't, there's been fear-mongering around nuclear, and then I also think the oil and gas lobby and coal lobbies have had a lot to do.
But that's cronyism, I think, right? It's cronyism.
With stopping
buying politicians, the lobbying, all this stuff, like creating arbitrary moats to protect their own industry. Like that's not real capitalism. That's cronyism. Using the state as a tool to protect their own industries.
I mean, you get into the issue though of what industries need scale economy and what industries don't. And if you need scale economy, like nuclear needs scale economy. I mean, maybe it won't. Maybe they're going to get into these small nuclear reactors. We'll all have one, but for now anyway, regulations and safety, you need scale economy in nuclear, and so government's going to have to be involved. It's going to have to be a utility, sadly. But you know, I mean, the government has run utilities and not necessarily badly. I mean, with respect to the electrical grid and the electrical system, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't think electricity is a corrupt industry per se.
It's kind of, you know, there's definitely some major problems in some utilities.
I mean, you got to
it's
put,
kind of a
you have to
semi-public
put like
profitable thing.
proper deterrents for grift and fraud and,
Right.
and with like real fucking jail time to people who like break the law. Like
Yeah.
I think the financial crisis showed that like when we don't put bankers in jail, like then they don't give a shit. And then they're still doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so
It's much worse than
don't-
they don't give a shit. It's
Yeah,
that they get to keep their jobs, keep their
it's
bonuses,
like
and then
we
nothing
don't
happens. They
have-
get bailed
There's
out.
no deterrent for
That's not real
corporate
capitalism,
greed.
though.
Right,
That's
no,
literally socializing the
Yeah.
losses and
No, I mean,
privatizing the gain.
and you know, the law professor from the Midwest, I'm forgetting his name now, was it White something? But you know, he prosecuted a lot of people, and you know, Keating 5, all those guys. I mean, it, you know, we've shown we can do it, but what happened is Wall Street grabbed, you know, control of everything, and their lobby is just too powerful, and you know, when you know, it started with LTCM, and then it kept going.
And look, to be fair, like the guy who's running the country right now, like he's not the most honest guy, and he does things like the Trump coin and the DC membership, and you know the grift. It's fucked up. Like you just like we don't need that. We need honest. We need
Yeah.
he has a lot of good ideas, and the administration is pushing us in the right direction. But when they do shit like this,
No, I
the
mean,
credibility is lost, and it's a
well,
and then you're like, well, fuck it, like let's not even.
Yeah,
let's not even do it.
and look, FDR was no saint, but at least when World War II broke out and FDR was involved, you know, and he gave the fireside chats and he explained what was going on. I mean, people believed, and people said, you know, shit, this is our country, we got to save it. And they all suffered, and they were willing to suffer together. And I think, you know, like Americans are great people in general, and I think that, you know, with a proper leadership, we would do the right shit. But you're right, Craig. I mean, it's
You raised some legitimate points for sure.
we have not, you know, we've not been blessed with proper leadership for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, I mean,
I don't even think we had a president who was alive the last previous period. I mean, he
yeah, I-
fucking was legitimately not alive. I mean, he couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. And
well,
he-
there's that, but
like,
yeah, I mean,
did you see all the pardons he signed? Like 5,000 pardons. You think Joe Biden sat there and signed 5,000 fucking pardons? You think he even has any idea what he was pardoning? I mean, like that is insane, right? So the corruption goes. It's like there's all sorts of problems, right? I mean, you do raise valid points, Craig, but you know, I'll take this all day over what we had previously, personally.
I think the difference is, though, too, is access to the internet and access to information now makes that central message a lot more difficult to convey to a larger group of people. Whereas in World War II, people were just doing what they told because they didn't have that type.
There
of
was no
access
other
to information.
alternative.
Yeah.
Well, it just
point,
means that
but-
there's an even larger premium on somebody to actually deliver the truth, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And so we have to have somebody who's beyond reproach. I don't know who that person is. It's not Trump. Clearly, isn't Biden. And I don't know who that person
Right
is.
now,
The
I would
society-
say Basent is the closest thing we have to a coherent messaging, talking, you know.
but here's the good news, Craig. I mean, history has shown that that person will emerge. You know, when conditions are bad and the solution is clear, sound money, that person will emerge and will lead us out of this mess.
Yeah.
And there'll be a person with a personal background that will suggest that they're truly trustworthy, and people will be willing to say, you know, okay, I'm gonna take the pain we got to take because I know that's what's in the best interest of my kids. I mean, you know, a lot of the other stuff we've been talking about here is just long-term thinking, short-term thinking. You know what I mean? I mean, it's you know, it's quarter by quarter, 2 year by 2 year, 4 year by 4 year. I mean,
but in the words of John Maynard Keynes, in the long run, we're all dead.
right? He was.
I mean, who cares if we
Keynes
just
was
print
a
money out of thin air and fuck everybody
socialist
over?
asshole. I mean, he was a really, really bad guy. He's one of the more evil guys of the 20th century, and so you know we need that person to emerge, and that person exists. I mean, I'm sure they do, and they will emerge at some point in time, and people will follow them, and we will go into this new system, and it'll be a good system in my view. I mean, these fourth turnings create big problems, but they also lead to, you know, a resolution, and we're going to get that resolution, in my opinion. So that's the good news. I mean, the bad news is we're in it right now, and the shit's flying, and it's going to keep flying for a while. I think.
I guess we're gonna find out and see how it plays out over the next couple of years. I'm curious to know. I mean, I'm not I read history, but you know, again, we're in a unique moment, and you know, I'm hopefully optimistic that, you know, obviously it's a lot to ask. There's threading the needle, doing all these different things, and you know, bad messaging, like you mentioned, and conflicts and all sorts of stuff. let's see how it plays out. Paul, can you put up all the live stream questions? I really want to answer all these, and let's pick a winner for these tickets. So if you could just maybe open it
For
up,
sure.
and you could put it on the main
Just
screen.
on that subject,
Uh-huh.
you know, just been thinking here. I think, you know, this idea of having a central figure, you know, that takes this bull by the horns is likely going to fail us like it always has throughout history. And instead, I think we need to now transition away from these central points of failure into these more decentralized autonomous organization type of leaderships, right? Where instead of having a president or a king, we have this smart contract type mechanism, you know, that is built on a protocol where people actually have the ability to vote and have a real influence on that ecosystem. And if that representative body isn't hearing the people, then they take their assets, you know, their decentralized currencies with them to the next prototype. But, you know, I really think Joe Rogan in this day and age has emerged as a voice of reason. And it's funny because he did not choose that. And he talks about how he's under all this pressure. Everybody's telling him,
Yeah.
oh, hey, you got to be more selective who you platform and stuff. And he's like, guys, I don't think about this. I don't want to think about this. I'm just having conversations here.
Yeah,
Right. It's not my fault the mainstream media has lost so much credibility that
yeah, he
now
has to be in this
people-
position. But to those who
Exactly.
much power is given, much is expected, right? So you know, there's a side to both coins. He is in that position. He has platformed a lot of people, and you know, he does, and he's learned a lot. And I do love that how he gives everybody a chance to speak, even if you know what they're saying sometimes is false. Is like let people determine, let people research, let people learn. But yeah, I mean, to those who have great power comes great responsibility.
One of the commenters said, maybe Larry is that person.
And maybe Larry is that person. I think he does have a great message in his book, and I'm super excited and pumped to continue. I mean, we just recorded the first episode today of our series, and you know, it was a fantastic episode, and we barely getting into the book, so I think we're gonna really have some great content, and hopefully we can spread his message far and support him. Buy his book, right? Like, you know, spread it to people. You know, send it to people. Buy it on Audible, right? It's there's some great messages and great history in there.
Absolutely.
Paul, do you?
Yeah.
Looks like we got about 4,300 people live here. Like, you know, are you able to pull up that live chat so we can look at some of it? Did you press clear chat?
No, I'm clicking. So as you see,
Is it going on a different screen?
No, something's malfunctioning here. When I
Uh-huh.
click on open chat, it just won't happen.
Are you on? Okay, you're on the Runway page, yeah. Are you streaming it from?
Oh, look, let's just keep it simple this time. It's failing on two fronts, so let's
Uh-huh.
not waste any more time on this. I will read them to you.
Where are
and
you seeing them though? That's what I'm wondering. Can you put where you're seeing them and just put it on the screen?
I'm trying. It's not working.
Mm.
It just won't open up on this screen
Oh.
for some reason.
Uh-huh.
So the questions that came in, one of them fairly funny. This one's on Rumble. Somebody said, Trump always gaslighting Americans for a cash grab. MAGA means millionaires always grifting America. Thanks, you guys. How much has Trump made on his meme coin? So somebody leaving, you know.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there is concern about whether or not you can, you know, bribe the president by investing in his meme coin, and what kind of access do you get to the administration by spending money to become a member of this club in DC that's opening up. And it's just, the optics are horrible, and we know that
The optics are
we
horrible
know
for
that
sure.
this has been going on in every administration forever.
Yeah.
We can't do the whataboutisms about that. Well,
Uh-huh.
Biden did it with the Hunter Biden's artwork, and we know it doesn't matter. Like, we have to be
Yeah.
better. We have to expect and command better. And so, but the outward, it's so brazen. It's literally the meme coin the day before the inauguration, and then now this club. You're just buying influence. And then when you have all these CEOs come to the White House to kiss the ring. I mean, I wrote a tweet about
did
this
write about that, that's why.
mafia capitalism, and I'm just like, you have all these rich guys coming in, these big companies. The small business owner doesn't get a voice, and so you're consolidating power with large companies. It's a problem, and it's just there's no credibility to the overall message when you're doing things like this. It's deflating the credibility that you have when you actually have some interesting things to say and do. So, but yeah, I wish we would stop that shit.
Anybody else have a take?
He's not making it easy on us Trump voters in the first 3 months, just given all that stuff. But the alternative, I think, would have been worse.
I agree with you. Happening
you
behind
just gotta
closed
keep
doors, I
thinking
think, is
that
just
for
part of. I'm going to take the opposite side in the sense of, like, I understand, like, yeah, the optics are horrible, but, like, the guy's literally survived multiple assassination attempts. He's lost money when he's been in office historically. You know, he's given up his private industry to go do his service. I think people like David Sachs, other people that are billionaires, like, you know, they're not doing it to make more money, right? Like, you're giving yourself.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to believe that, but I honestly don't know. I really don't know anymore about that. I mean, these guys are all finding ways to, you know, enrich their friends. I mean, like even
Lutnick's sons, Trump's sons.
I mean, Lutnick's doing this canner tether thing, like with Jack Mahler's. Like,
I think that's fantastic.
No, I like the idea.
It's great for our industry. And
I agree. I agree.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, how about all the options trades that took place? You know, right before the announcement of the 90-day pause.
What's going on there? That is like, you know, that's a little suspicious.
Bessen's doing meetings with hedge funds that are off the books, and like Steve Moran's doing meetings with hedge fund clients that no one knows about. Like, these guys should be like, we don't do that shit anymore. We got to stop. I mean, I know they're gonna try to pass this congressional insider trading law, whatever. But you know, I mean,
the Pelosi Act.
The Pelosi Act.
I love
that's
the
a great
name.
acronym. It is a great.
Yeah,
it is a great acronym.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's a
no,
problem.
the optics aren't great.
The optics are not great, but I don't personally believe they're doing it for money. It just doesn't make sense to me. Once you're a billionaire, like, you know.
The problem is half the country would disagree with it.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
And-
I guess that splits across political
you
lines
know,
there.
I mean, if you go back to Craig's example of how we need a united country to fight a problem that's similar to the issue of World War II, you know, it doesn't. When you start with half the country thinking you're a grifter and a bad guy, you're in a tough place.
But I just the media just lies about everything. So it's like they've created such division that it's like we're two different realities here.
But
you know?
I mean, take an example. Take a look at Elon, for example. Brilliant guy, a lot of great qualities about him. But you know, does the world's richest man, you know, have the right to donate an enormous amount to Trump and then basically buy a seat at his right hand side? You know, talking about policy. I mean, I don't know. I mean.
I literally think Elon might have saved Western civilization. So, you know, I would take the other side of that. But, you know, I again, gentlemen can disagree, and this is why we have these conversations, and everybody can have a take. And I think there's a lot of important messages that are getting out here and opinions, and, you know, viewers, listeners can chime in.
I'm not saying it because I'm pro Elon or I'm negative Elon, but I can tell you that there's half the country that thinks that, you know, the richest man in the world shouldn't be able to buy a seat next to the president. And I can understand that point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's some legitimacy to that point of view.
Absolutely. In a normal, you know, if we were in normal times, that would be a very rational, you know, understandable critique. But you have to know,
if George Soros hadn't bought in half of the judges of like in America right now and given all their campaigns, essentially own them, like freeing criminals on the streets. It's such a divisive time right now. And like, you know, it's.
I mean, just think about how they were turning on Elon. Had Trump not won, you know, his businesses, his corporation, his companies would have essentially been. I think they would have been.
I mean, I was on X when they were censoring people and doing all this stuff, and Elon literally saved the platform here that we're broadcasting on right now. I mean, like, if he hadn't done that, it was just like insane what was happening.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I'm just pointing out, you know, the optical piece of how hard it's going to be to knit the country back together. Yeah. When you're running it the way we're running it. That's
your
all.
messaging is, I think, a unifying message, and we want to return back to that normalcy, to that where that is a rational critique. And I think Elon would agree with you, honestly. I think that he was put in that position because he had no choice, right? It was an existential. He was essentially fighting for his freedom. I genuinely believe that they were going to weaponize the DOJ and these various agencies to politically assassinate him. But somebody else commented saying, you know, on the subject of Neuralink, that perhaps Biden could have used one of those.
That's a good comment. What else we got?
That would have been a great product endorsement. So it is. We are approaching the 6:30 hour. So we've been streaming now for 2 hours.
Okay.
Roughly.
Any more questions, Paul? So we can pick a winner.
Not that I see at the moment, guys. Remember, we currently have.
I've got Catherine. Paul. Phil said there was a lot of people commenting that he was talking to. He texted me about it, but maybe that's a separate live chat on one of the other platforms. Catherine here says gold price currently historically stretched from the 36-month moving average. What will cause the gold price to correct? Stock market melt up ? Bond market collapse ? DXY ? Currently in Goldilocks zone ? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
Well, gold's a little bit overbought, but if you look at it in a sovereign debt crisis scenario, it's actually still quite cheap.
Mhm. Yeah.
It needs to be multiples of today's price to cover all the fiat money we've created.
Mhm.
So, gold could actually start to trade a little bit more like Bitcoin. It could get a bit more volatile.
You think so? Wow.
I do, but we're not going back to 2070, which is where it was in March of last year. With 3,300, 3,400, could it correct back to 25, 26? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, it could easily, but I think in 5 years, it's multiples of today's price. Because I think what we are clearly seeing is a trend towards neutral reserve currencies throughout the world. And, what we're also clearly seeing is that fiat currencies are failing. And, gold, the price of gold and the price of Bitcoin are both demonstrating that. There's some great charts in the book that talk about the bond price of those two assets compared to the bonds. And, they're killing it.
Yeah, no, this looks more like the 70s for the gold price than not.
Yeah.
Kind of dislodging the removing the dollar from the gold standard Nixon did in 1971. I think Liberation Day will look back as the day that the U.S. removed the U.S. Treasury standard, the U.S. Treasury bond standard, and gold. And I think gold will just gold went from 40 to 800 over a
it was 22x in that cycle, although the 35-40 was really suppressed. And this cycle started in 2015 at 1,000. And we're now at 3x that, or 3.5x that. So, I mean, I fully expect gold to be 5,000, 10,000 in this cycle easily, potentially much higher. But I mean, I see 5,000 falling off a log.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Are gold investors factoring in the repricing of gold at Fort Knox?
Possibly. I mean, I think basically what gold investors are factoring in right now is just the mathematical certainty of debasement in order to keep the system running. I mean, the only way gold, if we have a deflationary depression, then the monetary price of gold may not go up, but its purchasing power would go up because the price of everything else in dollar terms would collapse, right? But I also think that, push comes to shove, politicians, take a depression like 1929 where, housing prices fell 60%, or, print money to keep the thing going. They're going to print money.
No doubt.
No doubt.
No doubt.
The big print.
The big print. We have one other question, which was, is China part of the IMF? Which it looks like I believe they are. So that was another question as well.
Yeah, I think they are.
You got anything else for us, Paul, before we give it a wrap here?
Make sure you comment for a chance to win and read the big print. We
yes.
Thank you.
believe
Yes.
that book has the potential to reach people who wouldn't typically engage with Bitcoin content, that might have already been swayed one way or another. This book has a very non-biased approach that can reach, in my opinion, the masses. So highly recommend reading that. And after you read it, come check out our series where we'll dive deeper.
All right, boys. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm gonna have Craig and Larry pick out some commenters or people who ask questions, and we'll be in touch and let you know who won the ticket. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll be back on Friday. So it's a wrap.
The Runway.